Sure, we can.
All right. Hello, everyone, and thanks for attending. My name is Sabari Viswanathan. I've been with Stephen for about 3.5 years now. And this is a very atypical tech talk. It's not even a tech talk, so there's going to be a lot of data that I'm going to present as well. It's about being responsible to our environment, to the planet we live in. It's entitled Consuming Smartly because most of our impact on the environment comes from how we consume products, services, how we move, and so on. So, so it's time to look at the environment seriously and not leave the problem to someone else. So I'm hoping that by the end of this talk, you'll at least think twice before consuming. That's all I'm hoping for. Anyway, let's get started. So my agenda for this meeting is it's about to divide into 5 or 6 parts. First is why should we care about the environment? This is not going to be an alarmist talk. You get bombarded with a lot of information on the web anyway. So this is not going to be an alarmist talk. It's about concrete tips that you can take, how you can incorporate a different lifestyle. About a couple of months ago, we sent a survey on behalf of the Green Grouplet, and I'm going to be, most of this talk is takes that survey into account seriously. So I'm going to be busting some myths that are prevalent about being green. I'm going to be giving you some ways to assess your environmental footprint. There's a hint right there. Look at how much trash you throw. Then I'm going to be presenting the principles of sustainable consumption. So if I'm hoping you take anything out of it, it's basically that portion of the presentation where I present the principles of sustainable consumption and how to throw away stuff when you're done with them. Then I'm also going to solicit some help. We need all your help to help drive policy change at Cvent. Cvent as a company doesn't pay any attention to sustainability at all, and we at the Green Grouplet are hoping to change that. And then last but not least, I'm going to be giving some tips for being more green at Cvent. Initially, I wanted to give more just green tips in general in your life, but there wouldn't be any time. But that information is very easily available. Any Google search for how to be more green, you'll get like tens and tens of tips. So this is specifically how you can be green at work. All right, let's dive in. The first part is about why we should care about the environment. And climate change is, in one phrase, the reason for it. It's real because it's already here. Unlike winter in Game of Thrones, we're not waiting for it. It's not coming. It's already here. We can see that in all these storms that we see. Like the climate patterns are changing across the globe in a very steady manner, and no part of the world is excluded to that. And if you watch Bill Nye the Science Guy, there's a very brief 37-second video that is unfortunately not suitable for this presentation because of the audience, but you can watch it. So we are living in an environmental crisis, and that's it. I'm no longer going to be alarmist. That's just one slide. Here's a quote that I keep coming back to. We don't pass on something. We don't inherit the earth from our ancestors. It's something that we borrow from our children, because what we are going to do is not going to be what we're doing today, or what we will do over the next few years is not going to affect us majorly. So it is actually affecting us as well. That's what we are seeing. But it's going to mostly affect the life for our grandchildren and the grandchildren of our grandchildren. So we're essentially we should be doing it for our grandchildren, not for us. If the idea of humans' well-being doesn't appeal to you, here is another reason why we should be doing it. Just as part of being on Earth, species becoming extinct is part of the natural phenomenon, but scientists are now concluding that we are losing species at about 1,000 to 10,000 times the natural extinction rate. And again, just like climate change, the evidence for this is overwhelming. And humans, I mean, you may think, why should we care about other species? But human health depends very strongly on biodiversity. Like we depend, like as part of the nature's life cycle, we depend on other species being healthy in order for us to be healthy as well. And as part of every slide, I'm providing a lot of links that you can check out later for more information. So here are some of the species that we have permanently lost, primarily due to climate change and accelerated human causes. This is the Vix's macaw. I'm just going to be giving a few photographs here. This is a stellar sea cow that we lost. This is a passenger pigeon that became extinct in 2012. This is the western black rhinoceros. These are all the huge, big species. This is the ibex that was lost because of deforestation. So, I mean, these are just some of the species that we are losing, and obviously these are the ones with the pretty faces, but there's also a lot of microorganisms and other things that we lose, both flora, fauna, across all species. And like, it behooves us to leave a beautiful world for our grandchildren. Humans are undoubtedly the most powerful species on Earth. There is no doubt about that. Not just be a physical power, but because of what we can do to our environment and how we can gather around in groups, build tools, and affect the environment in a big way. So I believe it's our moral responsibility to meet our growing human demands in a more sustainable way. This is not a quote from anyone. This is something that I'm saying. So at least if you're doing it for your grandchildren, or like to preserve non-human species doesn't work for you, just do it because it's just the responsible thing to do. Anyway, enough of trying to convince you why we should care. So let's get on to common myths about living a greener lifestyle. Again, this was based on, most of what I'm going to present here is based on the results of the survey that we sent out. We got about 250 responses to that survey. This is based on that. So the first myth, or a myth that people keep running into often, is that being green is expensive. And I don't blame you. If you go to the market, for example, and you want to buy, I don't know, laundry detergent, and then like the usual brand that you buy costs like $5, let's say, and then the equivalent brand is going to cost $12. Can someone who's speaking mute there, please? I don't know which conference room it is. There you go. Thank you. So, but the fact is that for most products, like if you buy plant-friendly alternatives, in the long term, the effect of it's an investment that you make, and the effect of buying more expensive products gets offset in the long term. And that's obviously true for most of them, not for all of them. Like for example, if you buy a water bottle, let's assume you buy an expensive water bottle that costs you $20, let's say, right? And it's easier to buy water from, buy plastic water cans, it's going to be cheaper. But over the long term, the fact that you're not going to be polluting that much plastic, it's going to pay back in no time, right? So take it with a grain of salt. It doesn't apply to most products, but overall, it's been found that having buying plant-friendly products is better for the environment. And like, let's face it, most of the people in this audience can afford it, right? Like if it means making a little bit of a sacrifice elsewhere in your life for the environment and for our planet, I mean, I think we should make it. I think that's a responsible thing to do. So the second myth, very popular myth, is like we're all individuals. Like we don't, like a few people here and there making a change won't make a difference. It's partially true. Yes, like the biggest bang for the buck will be obtained by making policy changes at the government, getting governments to care and change policies, change the environmental guidelines for the products that we produce and manufacture. Yes, that is true. But it also is true that, right now, as of yesterday, there are like, 7.7 billion people that are in individuals that inhabit Earth. And if we all put our minds together, we can definitely make large changes, right? In different ways, not just in like, our own consumption, but we can make a big change towards how we change the environmental footprint of our lives. A lot of people think being green is inconvenient because it takes research and like you need to be more prepared and planned. That's true. Being green does take more effort and take more plannings, but just like anything else, when you have your first baby, your life changes fundamentally. But then later on, in a couple of months, you get used to it. It becomes part of your second nature. I'm not suggesting that being green is anywhere close to as difficult as having your first baby, but it just becomes part of your life. I'll give you a concrete example. So until about 4 or 5 years ago, when I fly to India, let's say once every 2 years. And I know I should be flying less. That's one of the major contributors to carbon dioxide equivalent. I flew last month to get married, so I'm hoping that that's a valid excuse. So until—
Congratulations.
Thank you. Until about 4 or 5 years ago, I used to not take any water bottles, right? I just go, that's it. Just like if I don't plan, I just go, that's it. I just need to catch a flight and I go and take my stuff. And on an average flight to India, it's a long flight, right? And it's usually 2 or 3 flights. If they give you water in those plastic cups, right? So over a typical trip to India, I usually consumed about 5, let's say, plastic cups. And this is not to mention like the ones for the wine and other things, other drinks like that. Sorry about that. Ivan. Sorry. So since I started taking like a water bottle, I just take a water bottle, I empty it, remember to empty it before I get into the security check-in. And then now whenever the stewardess comes to give me water, I just show my bottle and she's more than happy to fill it for me. And that saves like 5 plastic water bottles a trip. So imagine if everybody on the flight did that, like what, 400 times 5, it's like, that's it. You have like 2,000 plastic cups that are saved just like that, right? So things like these add up really quickly. And taking a water bottle on a flight is a very, very simple choice for me. I don't even think about doing it anymore. It's just like taking the pillow that I sleep on. It's as simple as that, just pack it with the bag. Every time I fly, I do that. So another myth about being green is that it's not for me, it's for someone else to do, right? And usually the excuse that people give is, I don't have the time, I don't have the willpower, it's tough, I don't have the dollars to do it, I don't have the knowledge or the right situation, or there's so many excuses I've heard over the years, right? And the fact of the matter is that, saving Earth may be like a marketing term, but this really needs all of us. Everybody on this call and everybody on the planet have a role to perform in this battle, and the role is different, right? Like big corporations can, if they choose to, invest in a green future, and I'll show you examples of how Apple and Google and leading tech companies are doing that. It's scientists' duty to find greener alternatives to energy and so on. And as individuals, like in addition to being sustainable in our own personal lives, we can influence our local governments, right? And I don't mean when I say governments, I don't even mean like actual government, right? So for example, if you own a home and the HOA has valet trash pickup service, and they say you don't have to separate recyclable garbage from your regular trash, then ask them the question, right? Why should I not separate? I'm happy to separate it if you are able to throw recyclable trash and throw into the appropriate bin. Particularly if your local trash service provider provides it, it's your responsibility to ask your HOA, why don't we separate the trash, right? So that you can also take care of that, right? So things like that. So everybody can, once you start paying attention to it, everybody has a role to play. And the last myth is, I'm as green as I can be. I recycle and that's all I can do. And again, the answer is that it's a gamut, right? Like nobody's perfect. There's always room for improvement, right? So even if you're one of the, less willing people, you can always make small incremental changes, every month or every quarter. Try to be greener as you go along. So being green is a gamut, right? Just like anything else, right? Being organized or, being whatever it is. Like most things in life is a gamut. There's a spectrum. And on one end of the spectrum, there is the zero waste people who try to be absolutely zero waste. That means their entire trash that they produce for a year fits in a quart-sized bag. And I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about a family of 4. There's a famous book called Zero Trash Home or something like that. I have links to that. And their entire trash for that family of 4 plus 1 dog fits into a quart-sized bag, right? And I mean like non-recyclable, non-rottable trash, not just trash per se. And that is one end of the spectrum, right? And that is excessive. And for most people, that's not possible today at least. And on the other end of the spectrum, there is the people who live without any environmental responsibility. They just live life as it comes. So they produce gallons of plastic, paper, and other trash every day. In one word, they just consume without thinking, right? That's the other end of the spectrum. And we're all on different points on the spectrum. So all I'm asking is, like, let's, from our sweet spot where we live right now, let's keep pushing that farther and farther to the left, right? And and we can do it at our own pace without sacrificing our life's priorities. We can still, I strongly believe we can do that. And in my personal sustainable / green journey, over the last, let's say, 5 years that I've cared about this, it has actually increased the quality of my life substantially, because I have lesser stuff than I used to. I consume less, and I'm able to give more time to the things like matter to me, like being outside in nature, for spending more time with my family and things like that. And I think that you might find the same too if you take up that path. Okay, so we're on to part 3 of the talk, which is how to assess your environmental footprint. So let's all do a visualization exercise, right? So let's visualize like a cumulative trash can. Like you throw stuff during the day as part of your day, like you come to work, you throw something there at your work desk, you go to lunch, you take a water bottle, or like, they give you a plate or a plastic plate, you throw that into the trash can over there. Like imagine a single cumulative trash can from all the trash that you throw throughout the day, right? How does that look? How does that look in your mind after a day, right? It's probably going to be reasonable size. How does it look after a week? And how does it look after a year, right? So you can imagine that over a year, the amount of trash that you throw probably is enough to fit a room in your home, right? And the bad news is that's just physical trash that we throw. That's the physical trash that we consume. And it's still just part of your footprint, right? So imagine indirectly all the products that we consume, how much their environmental footprint is in terms of energy and other non-tangible costs. I'm not saying you shouldn't consume, right? You shouldn't feel bad about consuming. We are all, humans. We live on Earth, and we deserve to get our basic needs met. The idea is, how much do we pay attention to that? That's what I'm trying to say. And I would strongly suggest, if there are a lot of environmental footprint calculators out there on the web, this one I like because it's very data backed. They give you sources of all the data that provides them. Even if you don't believe the numbers that it throws out, right? It doesn't matter. Like it shows you what are the things that contribute to your environmental footprint. For just that alone, I think it's worth it. And again, on to some concrete data. The average American, this is pardon me, this is only for America because I am an American. I live in this country, so I thought I can provide this data to start with, and then I have a lot of global data coming later in this presentation. So the average American, as of 2015, I believe, and it's been 4 years since then. I don't know if it's increased or decreased. In 2015, the average American produced 4.4 pounds of trash per day, right? 4.4 pounds of trash per day, right? And therefore, the average family produce about 17 pounds of trash per day. And that's a lot of trash, right? I mean, can it be smaller than that? I certainly think it can be, right? And here are some, alternate, like, it's equivalent to a Leaning Tower of Pisa and so on, right? The idea is just to say, pay attention to your trash, right? So, and the goal of the zero trash movement is to reduce your trash. If you reduce your trash, you're definitely going to reduce your consumption for sure. Here's some concrete data around greenhouse gas emissions that I wanted to present. Like the first one is emissions by industry sector, because I think if you want to be a responsible consumer, you definitely need to know what are my, again, big ticket items that I need to be saving on. So if we look at the carbon dioxide emissions by sector, well, that is basically by industry. So these are the major contributors, like producing electricity and heat both for our homes and for our commercial offices. is the number one contributor. It contributes about 50%, right? This is for 2014, not for today. And transportation, like moving people and products, is about another 20%. Manufacturing industries, that means all that we buy, all the concrete things that we buy, is another 20%. And then energy for residential buildings, actually constructing buildings, is another 8%, and other sectors contribute that much. So transport and energy are the main contributors, right? So if you want to reduce your footprint, you can focus on, how you heat your home, ensure that you're insulated, like, things like that. Switch off lights when you leave. Don't run your, if you have a home that has like one unified thermostat for the entire home and you have like 2,000 square feet home, that doesn't make sense, right? For like for you to be heating or cooling one portion of your home, particularly at night when everybody is probably in one sector. Try to invest in with ACs and things like that. Just common sense. Cumulative carbon dioxide emissions by world region. This I think also is important for us to know. So a lot of people think that China and India, because we have 1.3, let's say like 35% of people live in China and India today, right? Among the 7.7 or whatever it is. So correspondingly, we should think that, the cumulative emissions for those two countries are number one, but that's hardly the truth. Because the industrial revolution has caught up with other countries a lot more. So Europe, collectively Europe is about 35% of the cumulative CO2 contributions. The United States, and we should not be proud of it, is 26%. By population, we are hardly anywhere close to that much. And then all the underdeveloped and developing countries are significantly less than that. Per capita CO2 emissions by country, again, that's also a very useful stat. Yeah. So this is data for 2014. So we are number one for the wrong reason. USA is like 20% per capita on the world, and China is number 5 on that list, and India is number 8. Not to single out any country, just to know where we are. So this is more of a reflection of what the country's government has a priority on, or as a cultural lifestyle, rather than like individuals, choosing to do it. Like in most of the European countries, environmental footprint conservation is a value. In America, it's not. And unfortunately, it depends on the political climate, and we all know what the political climate in this country is today. And the last one is by food type. I think this is also a very major choice, right? So how much CO2 emissions does it take to produce a gram of protein by food type? So beef and mutton are leaning by a significant amount, followed by produce. As you can see, generally meat takes more. It's more energy intensive, and it produces more emissions to produce, compared to having a predominantly vegetarian diet. And that's also been proved over the past. So my plea to you is obviously pay attention to these graphs and reduce your emissions appropriately. But as a single recommendation, I can say that eat as many vegetarian meals as possible. I'm not asking you to become vegetarian. That's a humongous lifestyle choice. And nobody can make that overnight. But this is a win-win the way I see it, right? All research is saying that vegetarian diet is more healthy compared to a meat-based diet. So it's healthy for you, and it pollutes significantly less, more than an order of magnitude less. So consider eating as many vegetarian meals as possible. And there are these plant-based meat alternatives like Impossible Food, Burger, and Beyond Meat that has become quite popular over the recent past. They've made it to the burger menus at Burger King and other places like that, McDonald's and other places like that. They claim, the jury is still out on whether or not they truly are better for the environment, though all the data, they claim 90% less and numbers like that. Even if the values are, let's say, 2x or 3x off, it's still a choice. Particularly if you're hooked onto the taste of meat. I have tried both. I used to eat meat until about 4 or 5 years ago, and but I haven't eaten meat all my life. But if the taste is acceptable to you, that's definitely a choice you can make. All right, on to part 4. which is the principles of sustainable consumption. So this is this is the most important part of the presentation. I hope you take home this message. So it's fairly simple. It's not complex at all. So in order to consume, it takes energy to produce anything, right? It takes energy to produce anything, even if it's the smallest thing. It takes energy to produce it, and takes energy to transport it from where it's produced to where you live, right? So if you can refuse to consume something, that's your best win, right? Like only if you consume, you need to worry about trashing it, how responsibly was it produced, and so on. The best way to reduce your footprint is to just reduce the amount of stuff you buy. So that's your number one step. That's what I call refuse here. The second step is to reduce how much you buy or consume to just what you need, right? Obviously, we cannot be, consuming zero. That doesn't make any sense. So if you need to consume, just reduce it and reduce the quantity to just what you consume. So if you go to a restaurant, and you have 2 people, order for 2 people. Don't order for 3 people and, trash the food, excess food that you don't get, right? So things like that, right? And like same thing, right? If whenever you buy anything, just make sure it's, in many cases, we end up overbuying and throwing away the rest of the stuff. Reuse whatever you have as long as possible. So this also sort of makes sense, right? So, if you buy furniture, try to use it as long as possible. Try to maintain it so it lasts a long time, and, it lasts as long as possible. I mean, if just because there's a new iPhone out there doesn't mean we have to get it, right? Try to delay that, like try to keep your phones for longer, just like popular things like that. And if you do decide to give something away because it doesn't suit your needs anymore, then try to repurpose it. Repurpose as in, there are several ways in which we can repurpose it, like gift it to someone who will use it. Don't throw it as opposed to throwing it into the trash. Give it to someone who has a use for it. Share it with someone, right? I don't have to do a gift, make it a gift, share it with someone. Or find another use. The internet is full of things like clever ways in which like people reuse something, that like beer bottles become flower vases and things like that, right? And try to, I mean, if you're not a very creative person, that's fine, but try to reuse things as much as possible, extend their life. Recycle non-organics, right? So if it's recyclable, so first buy recyclable as much as possible, and recycle them when you're done with them. And if it's organic or biodegradable, rot them, compost them. Hopefully your trash service company provides that. If you have a compost in your backyard, nothing like it, that's fantastic. It serves as manure for your backyard and so on. But not everybody can afford to do that. They live in apartments, so you can still throw away organic trash. And whatever remains after all this entire process is what goes to the trash. It pollutes the planet, and we know the rest of the story. So in terms of most sustainable to least sustainable, like this is how the graph looks like, right? So, the refusing has the maximum bang for the buck, refusing and reducing have the maximum bang for the buck, and so on. So this is simple. It's an extremely simple principle. Come to think about it. Just apply it to every situation. Whenever you buy something from Amazon the next time, think about it. So yeah, the other thing I wanted to say is that these principles apply to any situation. Like the green tips are specific to a particular situation, but these principles apply to any situation whatsoever. So think before you consume. And this is what I mean by consuming smartly. Just think about it. Okay, so we are a fairly technical audience. So I wanted to give you a flow chart for sustainable consumption, which is the equivalent of the principles, but maybe a little bit more concrete. So let's go through it really quickly. Again, it's not complex at all. So I've divided into 3 sort of blocks. The first block is about minimizing consumption in the first place. So when you want to buy something, ask yourself the question, do I really need it? Can I reuse something else I already have instead of buying something? Or can I buy used locally? So not everything that you buy has to be brand new, from Amazon.com, right? So if you buy locally, there are other advantages. There is no packaging, there is no shipping. So it reduces the cost of getting the stuff to you. So if you're able to stop at this box, that's great. That means you did not consume, that's fantastic. But if you choose still to buy it, then again, there's more choices. So, for any item that you want to buy, there are a zillion choices, right? So try to see if, so there is something called a manufacturer sustainability ranking. It's not uniform, unfortunately. It's not a regulation, but try to do another Google search for the manufacturer's name and see whether sustainability is one of their values, right? For most household products, like for example, simple things like Method is a company that produces household products for cleaning and like laundry detergent. It's a good product. They take environmental responsibility. They produce data. They voluntarily produce data for their emissions, and they try to reduce it as much as possible from their packaging, how they everything. So choose that over, let's say, Dial, which is not known to care about the environment that much. And look for labels that say humanely manufactured, no animal tested, not animal tested. Animal testing is not pertinent to the environmental crisis, but still, like, if you have a chance to be kind to animals, like, it's better to be. And obviously there's the cost factor as well, right? Like, nobody's asking you to burn your wallet buying sustainable products, but at least pay attention to those. And it's only going to become cheaper to manufacture, in an environmentally sustainable manner. All right, so that's about the sustainable product choices. The last thing is purely about packaging and shipping, right? So again, I told you, like, if you can buy the same thing locally, just prefer that over, shipping it from somewhere else. Can you provide your own packaging? Think about it. So for example, that's not possible for all stuff, but it is definitely possible for some of the items. So if you buy groceries, for example, I don't consume those plastic. I have grocery bags in the first place so that I don't consume plastic. Even for the ones like the produce, like tomatoes and things like that, I usually take my own bag for it so that I don't have to take the plastic bag that they have. And, I also try to buy in bulk as much as possible, right? So it works for certain things, it doesn't. Again, that's definitely a convenience thing that you can, try to adopt. But again, initially when you try to buy in bulk, it's a little bit more difficult, but then you get used to it. Because you go to the grocery store once, twice, thrice a week. So any savings there would multiply very, very quickly. When you buy on Amazon, try to see whether you can combine products into one order. So most websites now smartly combine them. So you don't have to, if you order within a certain period of each other. But don't order something in the morning and then order something in the afternoon and something in the evening. If you can sort of wait till the evening and order them, then I think the software sort of takes care of combining them smartly for you. And when you do buy, see if you can store packaging for future use rather than throwing it. You never know, you may want to move, or there's always a use for it. See if you can use it. All right. So just like there's a flowchart for sustainable consumption, there's also a flowchart for sustainable discarding or throwing stuff into the trash, right? So again, it just reinforces the same principles. The first question you ask yourself is, has it really reached end of use for you? Can you continue to keep using it? Is it still functional? Can I repurpose it for something else? Or can I sell it or gift it for someone else to reuse? Or do I have to trash it right now? If not, then you're done, that's good. If you do, then first find out whether it's recyclable or not, or if you can rot it, if it's organic. If not, it goes to landfill. It's fairly simple, nothing complex about it. All right, so those are the principles of sustainable consumption. So so far we have not talked about anything specific to Cvent at all. So I want to address that. So there is a grouplet called the Green Grouplet at Cvent. So we are focused on reducing the environmental footprint of Cvent without affecting its bottom line, the $1 billion and all that stuff. So I wanted to give you a brief overview of what we try to do. So we have two wings. So the first one is educating employees about environmental sustainability, just like this talk that I'm giving right now. We call that the personal wing because it encourages you to act in a responsible manner. There's also the second wing, which is to drive Cvent policy change. So I could ask you to bring your own water bottle to Cvent instead of using the paper cups they provide in HQ, for example, or I can get Cvent policy to change. And that is obviously significantly more effective because it's a policy change that applies en masse to all employees. But there are a lot of we are facing a lot of roadblocks in trying to get Cvent management to acknowledge sustainability. That's where we need help. Right now, nobody in the grouplet is well connected in the executive membership, and just requests for meetings from the executives just either they refuse it flat out, stating lack of time, or it's just not a priority. So that's when we need people who are well connected and who can say the right things to the right people and try to help drive policy change. So it's my aim to make sustainability a C-Event core value, right? So imagine Reggie coming out in an all hands meeting and saying, in addition to all the other things that he usually says, let's assume we make sustainability a core value. Now that message coming from Reggie is significantly more impactful, and it would help everybody pay attention to it seriously. That's basically one of my end goals for the Green Group, right? And just to provide examples for you, like here are two tech companies that have done a phenomenal job of environmental sustainability. Google has been releasing environmental sustainability report since the second or third year of its existence, and it's been carbon neutral since 2007. That basically means that for all the massive amount of data centers that it runs, it is carbon neutral for the last 12 years, right? And Apple is also known to have a significant commitment to sustainability. And these are both links. So I'm going to just share a quick snapshot of, they both release yearly environmental reports of what improvements they've made, what was their per capita footprint and things like that. So they measure it and release it, right? Voluntarily again, they don't have to at all. So this is a snapshot of Google's 2018 environmental report. So you can see some of these stats, like for example, they have become 100% renewable. They buy 100% renewable energy as of the last 5 years, I think. And they continue to make improvements towards a lot of their consumption, right? So they say like they've diverted 91% of waste from data center operations away from landfills, and they have detailed data on all of these. So, I mean, this is just a snapshot. Like I encourage you to visit those links and read those reports and see how they make changes. The same is true for Apple as well. If you've been to the Apple campus in the Bay Area, you would see that it's definitely one of their core values. So anyway, it's probably wishful thinking for me to expect C-Event to release an environmental report every year and so on. First of all, we don't own most of the buildings we lease in most places. Like these people have way much more cash than we do. But at the same time, there is definitely scope for a lot of improvement from C-Event that we can take these companies as an inspiration for. All right. So what are some of the initiatives that the Green Grouplet is focused on right now? I wanted to present those, so you can join the team and help out. So we are in the process of compiling an exhaustive compendium of green tips for work, home, travel by category, so that a lot of things that you think of, you don't have to worry about solving the problem yourself. Someone has already solved it. Just look at those and see whether, hey, that's an opportunity for me to implement. And obviously this is a big database, so we want to have a reasonable front end to it. So, and that's where the /green Slack bot that we are building will come to the rescue. So now Slack is now available for all employees at C-Event. So we are in the process of building a /green Slack bot that provides personalized green tips. Even personalized is sort of like phase 2, phase 3. It provides green tips. So you can just say /green, how can I, reduce my work footprint? How can I reduce my plastic consumption? And it will give you a list of like tips and it ensures that it doesn't give you the same tip over and over again. And eventually the vision is basically to give you personalized tips to avoid points, so that, if there's like a little bit of motivation factor, and it's available for every employee to use. So if you're not part of technology, for example, and you still want to learn something about how to build a Slack bot, then this is a good opportunity to work with someone in technology and learn. So it's a cross-team collaboration opportunity. We also are about to release a periodic green newsletter, like every quarter is what is the consensus from the Green Grouplet survey, so that you can continuously receive information about it. We want to influence leadership, like I said, to hire a C-Event Green Czar. Like Green Czar was a famous title that Barack Obama gave to her Green Czar. And even if we don't hire one Green Czar, like we are growing like crazy. We are hiring 100 people by the hundreds. Definitely there is room to hire like let's say a team of 3 or 4 or even one, create a sustainability team and have that. And that's where we need to influence leadership to do that. We've been trying to work with operations, HR, and other teams to make a lot of improvements. Here are some examples. So if you work at HQ, there are a lot of offices that are already sustainable, so they don't buy plastic and paper cups and plates and cutlery and things like that. But HQ has been buying plastic for a long, long time now. So we have been working with operations and trying to replace them with sustainable products, which are obviously more expensive. So they are basically doing it on an experimental basis. They are introducing, people who work at HQ may have noticed that, sometimes the plates and bowls look different. You should not be using those plates. I'll come to that. Sustainable catering for all hands meetings and other team meetings and so on. We want to reduce energy consumption. If you go to any conference room at Cvent across the globe, the two monitors, usually it's 2 monitors per conference room, are always turned on. They're turned on during the day, they're turned on during the evening, they're also turned on, unfortunately, during the weekend when they're not at all in use. We've tried to get them to switch off, but it requires extra technology for us to remotely do that, which costs about $30 per monitor. So facilities has promised us that over time, as they replace old TVs, they will buy it along with spend the extra $35 so that they can turn it off remotely they turn off automatically after 2 minutes of non-use, and they can be woken up reliably when there's a meeting in the room. All right, so the last part, we have 10 more minutes, so I'm doing good time here. So it's practical tips for being green at Cvent. So this is like a laundry list. Let's assume, so the first slide is about reducing plastic and paper. Again, this is very office dependent here. For HQ, most of this will apply. So if you work in an office that provides just because it provides paper and plastic bowls and plates and cutlery, don't use them, right? So bring your own. You just need to bring one water bottle, one bowl, maybe for your cereal or breakfast or whatever it is, 1 spoon, 1 knife, and 1 fork. That's it. And if you bring it, you don't have to take any of these, every day, right? And then most offices have kitchens, so you should be able to wash it and reuse that. If you're consuming Coke or other cans, do not throw them into the Cvent trash if possible. Unfortunately, even though the offices themselves, if you go downstairs, there is a recyclable trash separately. But the problem is our janitorial staff just dump. Even if you go to the kitchen and throw your Coke can into recyclable trash, it's likely that the janitorial staff at the end of the day just take everything and put it together. And we've tried to train them, but the staff continuously change, so it's not worth it to spend more and more time with them. So if it's simple, the amount of trash that you produce hopefully is less during the course of a day. So if you can take your recyclable trash home and recycle at home, that would be great. There are a lot of offices where there is recyclable trash, and you need to locate it. For putting HQ, I know that it's in front of the big parking lot as you get out of Tower 7, I think. But if you can't locate it, just take it home, and it shouldn't be a lot for a day. If you go to Starbucks every afternoon, don't take one of their, so there are 3 things that are part of every coffee. If you don't plan and pay attention to it. There's a paper cup with, there's a semi-plastic top on it, and there's also a sleeve, which is made of cardboard. So every time you go to Starbucks, that's what you end up using. So if you bring your own mug, it's a win-win situation, right? So first of all, they take it. Secondly, they give you 10 cents, or I don't remember how much they give off. So they're happy to have you use your own coffee mugs. When you go out to lunch with your colleagues, prefer dine-in to takeout. Again, an average takeout for is usually 1 paper or other type paper. If you're lucky, if you get paper, it's usually something else that is not even recyclable. And also there's the plastic cups, cutlery, and then the small cups for your sauces and so on, right? So you can think of how the average takeout looks like. So if you dine in, most likely you're going to get, reusable, stainless steel cutlery and regular plates that they use. In addition to that, at the end of your meal. First, spend some quality time with your colleagues, talking to them over lunch. And at the end, if you bring your own takeout container, you can bring back leftovers. Transportation based tips here. One second. Just want to make sure there's in the chat is not something important, right? So here are some tips related to transportation, right? So first thing is obviously work from home. If you can work from home, you don't have to commute. That's fantastic. But obviously there's a limit, and your manager may not allow to do it more than once or twice a week. If you can't, just bike into work. If that's a possibility for you, it's a win-win because it's an extremely healthy way to commute to work. You would get into the best shape of your life. Carpool, if that's again an option for you. If you have colleagues that work in the same area or friends that work in the same area, try to carpool if that's something that's permissible for you. Take public transportation if that's an option. Prefer that to driving in. Corporate travel, I personally feel a lot of us travel much more than we need to in a lot of cases. So if you can Zoom more and travel less, you will save the company a lot of money and you would make Reggie happy. I think reducing the travel budget is something that he wants to do. So see if that's an option for you. Energy reduction. So, printing, so don't print. That's the best piece of advice I can give you. Use electronic ways to communicate. If you absolutely must print, then print 2 pages per sheet. That means, essentially you're doubling up. And you print on both sides, so you basically get 4 times the amount of information on one piece of paper. And if your printer doesn't have that set to be the default, please do, so that every time you print, it's already available. Use as few external monitors as possible. This is something that it's true for technology. So a lot of people have 2 external monitors, and just because it's there, they end up using it. If it provides real value, that's great. Like for example, for code reviews and things like that, it does make sense to split it out. But when I just do that during the code review, switch it back off if possible. Like we all get fancy MacBook Pros, which have extremely high resolution displays. So you don't necessarily need to. I mean, see if that's a compromise you could make. In most cases, you would be fine. Switch off your monitor when you go home. Please don't have your screensaver come on. Like when you go to lunch, that's still an hour break. When you go home at the end of the day, that's still obviously a lot, and during the weekends. Open windows so we can use fewer and fewer lights. A lot of our offices are extremely overlit. When I go to India, there's like it's just way too bright, more bright than necessary. So in most cases, we can open windows and we can switch off a lot of those lights. Have a plant at your desk. Plants have been having plants at your workplace and at home for that matter have a lot of benefits. They add color, they improve air quality, they are known to boost creativity, productivity, and in general, they improve your mood. That's what research suggests. Anyway, so these are some tips, not an exhaustive list by any means, that you can take up to reduce your footprint. Let's see then. All right, that's pretty much it. That's all I had for this talk. So to summarize, think every time before you consume. Don't click that button order as soon as you need to just reduce the time gap increase the time gap between I need something and voila, it's already on the way. Just try to think twice before whether you already have it or not. And all the other things I told you about. Consume smartly, use your intelligence. Like we're all smart people. When you apply our intelligence to the problem, yeah, we can definitely make a huge difference. The principles of sustainable consumption: refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, rot, and trash if you absolutely need to. And then it's more effective. It goes less and less effective from left to right. Help us make sustainability a even core value. I am planning to gather some momentum for the Green Grouplet before I actually schedule a meeting with Reggie and present it. I haven't talked directly to the leadership, but I want to gather some momentum and some backing for the grouplet before I do that. And that's where you can join us and help us out. So if join us so that's the Slack channel, Grouplet Green. Particularly if you're well connected with the leadership, please join us in the Green Grouplet. And we hope to see all of you there. Any questions?
No one has any more questions or any questions?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm going to join the green grouplet to get my question.
Thank you.
That was an awesome presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Sabari. Appreciate it.
No worries. Yep. Thanks.
All right, everyone have a good weekend.
You too.